Emma adjusted the vase of fresh flowers on the dining table, stepping back to admire her handiwork. The soft glow of the evening sun filtered through the curtains, casting a warm hue over the room. She glanced at the clock. Daniel would be home any minute now. Their apartment was a reflection of their shared life, cozy, elegant, and filled with memories. Photos of their travels adorned the walls, and the bookshelf overflowed with novels they'd read together. To anyone looking in, they were the epitome of a perfect couple. But perfection, Emma had learned, was often just a facade. The sound of keys jingling in the lock pulled her from her thoughts. She turned just as Daniel walked in, his tie loosened and a tired smile on his face. "Hey, beautiful," he said, dropping his briefcase by the door and pulling her into a hug. Emma breathed in the familiar scent of his cologne, feeling a momentary sense of calm. "Long day?" she asked, pulling back to look at him. "You have no idea," he sighed, running a hand through his dark hair. "But it's better now that I'm home." They moved to the kitchen, where Emma had prepared his favorite meal. As they ate, they talked about their days, laughing over silly office gossip and sharing their usual banter. To an outsider, it was a picture of domestic bliss. But beneath the surface, something felt off. It had started a few weeks ago, with little things. Daniel's phone, which he used to leave carelessly on the counter, was now always face down. He'd been working late more often, and when Emma asked about it, his explanations were vague. At first, she'd brushed it off. Daniel was a hard worker, after all, and she trusted him. But then there was the text. It had been an innocent enough moment. Daniel had left his phone on the couch while he went to grab a drink. When it buzzed, Emma glanced at the screen out of habit. The message was from an unknown number. "Can't wait to see you again." Her heart skipped a beat. She told herself it was nothing, maybe a wrong number, or a joke from one of his friends. But the seed of doubt had been planted. When Daniel returned, she handed him his phone, trying to keep her voice casual. "You got a text." He glanced at the screen, his expression unreadable, and quickly locked the phone. "Oh, it's just spam," he said, setting it aside. Emma wanted to believe him. But the way he avoided her eyes made her stomach cower. That night, Emma lay awake in bed, staring at the ceiling. Daniel's steady breathing beside her should have been comforting, but all she could think about was that text. Her mind raced, conjuring up scenarios she didn't want to entertain. She thought back to her previous relationship, one that had ended in betrayal. Her ex, Mark, had been charming and attentive, until she discovered he'd been seeing someone else for months. The pain of that betrayal had left scars, and though she'd tried to move on, the fear of being hurt again lingered. Daniel stirred beside her, his arm instinctively reaching for her. She stiffened, then forced herself to relax. He wasn't Mark, she reminded herself. But the doubt gnawed at her. The next morning, Daniel was his usual cheerful self, oblivious to the storm brewing in Emma's mind. He kissed her goodbye before heading to work, leaving her alone with her thoughts. She tried to distract herself with chores, but her eyes kept drifting to his nightstand, where his phone lay charging. The temptation was overwhelming. Before she could second-guess herself, she picked it up and unlocked it. Her heart pounded as she scrolled through his messages. Most were work-related or from friends, but then she saw it, the same unknown number. The thread was short, just a few messages. Unknown. Can't wait to see you again. Daniel. Me too. Let's meet at the usual place. Emma's hands trembled. She felt sick, her mind spinning with questions. Who was this person? Where was the usual place? And why hadn't Daniel told her? When Daniel returned home that evening, Emma was waiting for him, his phone in her hand. Her expression was a mix of anger and hurt. "We need to talk," she said, her voice shaking. Daniel's eyes widened when he saw the phone. "Emma, I can explain." "Who is this?" she demanded, holding up the screen. "And don't tell me it's spam." "I'm not stupid, Daniel." He sighed, running a hand through his hair. "It's not what you think. That's just a colleague. We've been working on a project together, and sometimes we meet outside of work to discuss things." "Why didn't you tell me?" Emma asked, her voice breaking. "Why did you hide it?" "I didn't hide it," Daniel said, though his tone lacked conviction. "I just didn't think it was a big deal. I didn't want you to worry." "Well, I am worried," Emma shot back. "Because this feels like lying. And if you're not honest with me, how am I supposed to trust you?" Daniel looked at her, his expression a mix of guilt and frustration. Emma, I love you. I would never do anything to hurt you. But you've been so distant lately. It's like you're looking for reasons not to trust me. The words stung, partly because they were true. Emma had been on edge, her past insecurities coloring her perception of their relationship. But that didn't excuse Daniel's secrecy. The tension between them grew over the following weeks. Emma's suspicions made her hyper-vigilant, and Daniel's patience wore thin. They argued over little things, a missed call, a late night at work, a comment that felt off. One evening, after a particularly heated argument, Daniel slammed his fist on the table. I can't do this anymore, Emma. I feel like I'm walking on eggshells around you. Nothing I do is ever enough. Maybe if you were more honest, I wouldn't feel this way. Emma shouted back. Honest about what? Daniel demanded. I've told you everything, but you're so caught up in your own head that you can't see what's right in front of you. The room fell silent, the weight of their words hanging in the air. Emma felt tears welling up, but she refused to let them fall. Maybe we're not good for each other, she said quietly. Daniel stared at her, his expression a mix of shock and pain. Is that really what you want? Emma didn't answer. She didn't know. The next few days were tense. They barely spoke, each lost in their own thoughts. But the silence gave Emma time to reflect. She realized that her fear of being hurt was pushing Daniel away, the very thing she was trying to avoid. One evening, she found Daniel sitting on the balcony, staring at the city lights. She hesitated, then joined him, sitting quietly beside him. I'm sorry, she said finally. I didn't mean to push you away. It's just hard for me to trust sometimes. Daniel looked at her, his eyes softening. I'm sorry too. I should have been more open with you. I just didn't want to upset you. They talked for hours, opening up about their fears and insecurities. Emma shared how her past had shaped her, and Daniel admitted that his parents' divorce had left him wary of commitment. I don't want to lose you, Daniel said, taking her hand. But we can't keep going like this. We need to figure out how to trust each other again. Emma nodded, tears streaming down her face. I want that too. They decided to seek couples therapy, a step that felt daunting but necessary. Through therapy, they learned to communicate more openly and address the root causes of their trust issues. It wasn't easy. There were setbacks and moments of doubt. But slowly, they began to rebuild their relationship. They made a conscious effort to be transparent with each other, sharing their thoughts and feelings without fear of judgment. Emma started journaling to process her emotions, while Daniel made an effort to include her in his work life, introducing her to his colleagues and keeping her updated on his projects. Months later, they stood on the same balcony where they'd had their breakthrough. The city lights twinkled below, but Emma's focus was on Daniel. I'm proud of us, she said, leaning into him. Me too, Daniel replied, wrapping his arm around her. We've come a long way. They weren't perfect, and they knew there would be more challenges ahead. But for the first time in a long while, they felt like a team. Emma looked up at him, a smile tugging at her lips. I love you, Daniel. I love you too, Emma, he said, kissing her forehead, always. Don't forget to subscribe this channel for more interesting stories.